Dr. Raymond Wiggins. It is weeding out the lies about marijuana. Doc, thanks so much for coming on. Greatly appreciate your time today.
Hey, Rod, thanks so much for having me. I appreciate you having me on.
All right, so let's kick this around. So, just discussing the book, what made you want to get into writing about marijuana? You're a dentist. It doesn't seem like it's something that dentists are really have a lot of knowledge on, I guess. Maybe they do. Maybe it's just me.
Yeah, I'm a physician as well. So that's what people
Oh,
don't understand. I am an oral and maxillofacial surgeon. And so it's kind of the bridge between medicine and dentistry. Some oral and maxillofacial surgeons are not physicians. I am. I chose to go the extra few years to do that. And so the way that I got interested in this is I have three close relatives who died young. And I have absolutely no doubt that they would be here today if not for marijuana. One of them uh, died just a couple of years ago, and he had smoked marijuana for about 30 years, and he died of a sudden heart attack. Um, and then I have another close relative who went to college, and he got in with a group of guys who were smoking marijuana. And he thought, well, everybody's doing it. Everybody seems to be okay. So he started smoking it with them. And after only a couple of times, he wound up in a psychiatric ward, and he was never able to return to school. And I didn't understand the marijuana's problems with the heart. I didn't understand marijuana's problems with psychosis until I started looking into it. And those are two of the biggest issues with marijuana, especially in young people. And so I also, from the professional side, many of my patients who use marijuana always check the box that says anxiety. And so there's increased anxiety. And if you look into the statistics, there's somewhere between a 25 to 50% increase in the risk of anxiety when you smoke marijuana. Also, sedations. I've done over 27,000 sedations. And we see for the types of anesthetics that we do, the total IV anesthetics, we use propofol. A lot of people think of that as the Michael Jackson drug. But for propofol, we have to use about 3 times more propofol on average for marijuana smokers. And so I could just go on, seeing all these effects in my patients, my family, my friends. I began to look into the subject from a medical standpoint. And what I found absolutely shocked me.
and I want to get into this because we did get a lot of audience questions on this. So we're going to kind of go towards that toward the end because I do want to get into more about the book. So just speak about writing the book and who you feel it's geared to.
Well, we've actually changed the name of it recently to Weeding Out the Myths after doing some market research on it. So it's Weeding Out the Myths about marijuana. The book is geared to a couple of different groups. It's geared to people who smoke marijuana because I think the evidence in the book is absolutely overwhelming against marijuana. I think if you read this book, you're going to change your mind if you're smoking it, and you're going to say, "Hey, this is not something that I want in my body." It's also geared to people who have loved ones who use marijuana, and that they can see those problems that oftentimes the person who's smoking marijuana doesn't really see. And I'm actually writing a couple of different books. I'm writing one that's geared strictly to the medical side. I'm also writing one that's geared to the not only the medical side but the biblical side. And there's things that the Bible talks about as far as marijuana, and people don't think that it would say anything about it, but it does talk about being sober and all the problems that we can have when we're not sober. And then I have study guides for both of those. So if you want just the medical side, that's one that's going to be geared towards public schools and public institutions, et cetera. That's a great one for you. And if you want the other side, then that one's there for you as well.
You feel marijuana is the new smoking?
It is. Marijuana is the third most used addictive drug behind smoking and alcohol. And it's not really too far behind alcohol. And in fact, if you're looking at young people, more young people smoke marijuana now than use alcohol pretty significantly. So it depends on a whole lot of a lot of things. There's several demographic factors that you have to take into consideration there. But for young people of certain ages, marijuana is actually used more than alcohol.
And I want to talk about this because obviously a lot of these states have passed laws to legalize marijuana in general. Have you done any studies about what's going on in a lot of these states? And if there is more car accidents, overdoses, whatever it may be, in these states that have legalized it than the other states that maybe are just medical or haven't legalized even medical?
Yeah, if you look at Washington State and Colorado, there's lots of statistics from those two states. As soon as they legalized marijuana, the next several years after that, the risk of a fatal car accident and the risk of car accidents both doubled in those states. If you go back to 2000 nationwide, the risk of a fatal car accident involving marijuana was around 9%. By 2018, that was 22%. So more than doubled during that time. And the vast majority of that increase was in states that had legalized. And in fact, it changes even if you just legalize medical marijuana, it goes up some. But when you legalize recreational marijuana, it goes up a lot more.
Then talk about the difference to fully legalizing it than having medical marijuana. Because medical marijuana, you can correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm obviously a very novice on this topic, but I believe medical marijuana is more towards people having a lot of pain issues. We hear about the CBD oil and those issues. And I personally, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, if you think this is wrong too, that wouldn't you rather have somebody on marijuana than someone using an opioid because of the addiction aspect? Or are they both as addictive as each other, or what?
Yeah, there was a study in 2010 that looked at that, and it showed that those who would use marijuana could potentially get off of opioids. The problem is that pretty much all the studies since then are against that, and very much against that. And in fact, what it shows is that you get addicted to both. The problem with today's marijuana is that it's the THC percent, the potency of the marijuana is much higher than it used to be. If you go back to 1969 and you go back to Woodstock, 1 to 2% was the average THC percent, the potency of the marijuana. The really good stuff was 3%. Well, today it's 22 or 23%, depending on the studies that you look at for the average THC potency. Anything above about 10% causes much more addiction. It causes physical addiction as well as just psychological addiction, like the lower potency does. And it causes many more problems. And so when you look at the studies now, I think it's against trying to use that to get people off of opioids. And you talked about pain. If you really look at the best studies, the latest studies regarding pain, there's only a few studies that show that marijuana actually helps with pain. And those studies really show very little difference. We're talking a couple of percentage points to if there's any benefit at all. And when you look at the side effect profile, really, I think that it's probably not the best route to go. There's a lot better pain medication out there, and the side effect profile of most of those medications is a lot less.
So, Doc, would you say that marijuana is only safe when it's in very low dosage? Then, if you were to take it, I'm saying, because you're saying the THC level was lower back in the 60s and the 70s, and then it went sky high.
So it was certainly safer back then. Was it completely safe? No. But if I had a choice between the two, absolutely, I'm going with the 1 or 2% THC. You can't find that today. It's difficult to find anything below 14 or 15% in most cases. And there's absolutely no studies out there that show that marijuana, especially in the higher doses, helps with any type of a medical condition. There's a few things that the FDA has approved it for, but that's very specific things. Some anxiety there and some sleep disorders. But if you really look at the NIH's take on those studies, they think that there's a lot of bias in those studies. And the American Medical Association, the Journal of the American Medical Association, published a big meta-analysis, which is the best type of study, and really showed that even for those things, it really doesn't help. And the FDA has never approved marijuana to be smoked for anything. They're only some of the very concentrated or very taking all the impurities out of it. It has been approved for some of those things. So THC itself, not marijuana.
What if you grow it though? Because can't you measure? And again, I'm a novice. I've never smoked or done any kind of drug for that matter. So I don't know much about the topic. You know more about this, way more than I do. But what if you're a grower? If you're growing marijuana, can you monitor that THC from the plant?
You can buy plants that are less or more THC, but the market really is geared towards more and more THC. So it's difficult to find anything that would be a lower THC. I suppose you could make it. You could make some marijuana, some joints that would be less THC, but I think it would be difficult. You'd have to really know what you're doing to be able to do that.
Again, for people listening, Dr. Raymond Wiggins, it's Weeding Out the Myths. That's the new book out. Definitely check him out. And we'll get into where you can find more about him as we go toward the end of the interview. I want to just go a little deeper into this because obviously we hear a lot about fentanyl. That's not what this talk is about, but I just want to kind of, because fentanyl, there's being candies laced with fentanyl. But we're also seeing marijuana being laced with many different drugs right now. And people buy stuff off the street. They don't know what the heck they're getting. And even sometimes in stores, you don't know really what the heck you're getting. So can you talk about that being a huge problem with buying marijuana, that it could be laced with many different drugs that could kill you for that matter?
Well, first of all, people think that marijuana is quote unquote natural, and the marijuana that we have today is completely different. There's been a lot of genetic engineering to get the higher THC levels. There's a lot of pesticides and heavy metals and things like that are in marijuana. But as far as it being laced with fentanyl, there are many cases of it being laced with fentanyl. I was on an interview a couple of months ago with someone who had been the mayor of a town in California. And she said in a 1-month period, right after she was no longer mayor, in her small town, there were about 14 or 15 cases of overdose. Now, not every one of those patients died, but it was all from fentanyl-laced marijuana. And so somehow it had gotten into their town, and the people who were selling it there, a lot of it was laced. So yes, you definitely have to be careful. Fentanyl can kill you immediately. It makes you not be able to breathe. It just stops your breathing and you can die.
Yeah, it's truly scary. I want to move toward the audience questions as far as we go into this interview. Doc, when we talk about addiction toward marijuana, how long does it take for you to get addicted to marijuana? As far as, is it the first time or is it like 10 times? How long do you feel like it takes?
It happens a lot quicker when you're younger. Dr. Kevin Sabet, who worked for several administrations, both Democrat and Republican, he was basically second in command to the drug czar in those administrations. And he said that up to 46% of young people become addicted. The exact amount of time, nobody knows exactly how long it's going to take. But up to 40%, 46% of young people, and up somewhere between 9 and 30% of all marijuana smokers become addicted. It's going to happen more the higher the potency, the more you use and the younger you start. For most people, it's not going to happen immediately. It's usually going to happen over a period of at least months or years. But for some people, there are cases where after only a few times that people show a lot of the signs of addiction, especially with the very high THCs. There's some marijuana plants out there now that are pushing over 40% THC.
I'm thankful, as I stated earlier to you, I've never done that drug, so I'm good. And I'm not intending to do that drug or any other drugs. I don't like pills. I don't like any kind of drugs in general, plants, pills, whatever it may be. So let's move deeper into these audience questions. Talking about the tax revenue issue, a lot of states were saying, hey, all right, if we're going to legalize it, we legalize it. We're going to get that tax money and tax the hell out of this and let people do it. And we're going to get all that income into the state so we can put into either social programs or roads or whatever it would be. But can you make the case that that's not correct, that that's not good, I guess, for the state? And it seems like it's not good because people could be getting sick, dying, the list goes on and on.
Yeah, first of all, if that was really true, is it really worth it for all the bad things that it can cause? The increased hospitalizations, the increased car accidents and fatal car accidents. But if you want to really look at the numbers, if you look at Colorado, they get 0.85% of their budget from marijuana. And for every dollar that they bring in, they spend $4.50 mainly in increased medical care, increased indigent medical care in their communities. So is it worth it? No. Overall, it's going to cause more problems than it's going to solve, both socially and economically.
What would you say to somebody that says, hey, they're going to smoke it anyway, legal or not legal? So why not just make it legal and then have it in the dispensaries? And hopefully it's a lot safer than obviously on the street. Then, so what would you say to somebody there?
Yeah, for those who think that that's the best route to go, the problem is that when it becomes more available, it causes an increase in the number of people who use, and so therefore more problems. In the first couple of years in most states after legalizing marijuana, there's somewhere around a 25% increase in the number of young people who use. And that's where we see the biggest issues. There's issues throughout life. If I started today in my 50s, I'm still going to have problems. But if someone starts at 15, they're going to have major problems. And so we're causing a lot more problems for these young people. And I just don't think that it's worth it for these states.
And just rounding third and headed for home here with these last couple of questions here. When we talk about CBD versus smoking it, what is worse?
Well, if you have a choice between CBD and marijuana, I would absolutely go for CBD. CBD is kind of the magic elixir of our time. People think that it treats everything. But the problem is that Mayo Clinic, FDA, NIH, Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration all say that CBD is not proven to do any of the things that it's supposed to do. The thing is that CBD is a $5.3 billion industry, including hundreds of billions of dollars, 560 billion, I believe it is. Hundreds of millions of dollars, $560 million for pets. And so people use it for so many different things that it's supposed to treat. But the problem is that it decreases alertness. There's changes in mood, and there can be even though it's considered to be to not cause brain or mental health issues. Actually, in people who use THC at any point, they have more chance of psychosis from CBD. So there's a lot of problems, and we really don't know the long-term effects. What we do know is that most people use it for sleep and for anxiety. And for both of those things, It really doesn't help. It does make you drowsy, so it does help people to go to sleep for the first couple of months. But the problem is after a month, it works a little less, and by the third month, you actually have sleep disturbances. So you're not really going into REM sleep. So it's causing sleep problems and not really benefiting your sleep. So you wake up and it's as if you didn't sleep very much at all.
So what is the solution then? I mean, obviously you're trying to get the word out and you're against this. And I do, as I told you guys, should say before we started the interview, I was for it because of the taxation. But, you just stated the reason of that's not working in plain English. So it seems like for me, as a person that's not a drug user, as a person that's never smoked marijuana, don't really want to do it, not in my lifestyle in general, as a person that's an athlete, it seems like it's just not good altogether then.
Yeah, I would agree. There's so many physical issues. There's brain problems, heart problems, lung problems, and then the mental health issues. There's increased psychosis. There's increased depression, increased suicide, especially in young people. Suicide is just so rampant today among our young people, and marijuana is just making that so much worse. And so when you look at all those things, and then you look at increased car accidents, all of the lifestyle issues, people think that it makes them calm, but there's actually studies that show that there's more domestic violence, more dating violence, and things like that. So you combine all these things, and I just don't think that marijuana is really the benign drug that we've all been led to believe that it is.
Well, from what we spoke about today, it seems like marijuana is the smoking back in the 40s and the 50s, where everybody was smoking and it was good for you. And the list goes on and on, all the commercials, and it's so fun and stuff. And I think that marijuana and vaping, which we didn't even talk about today, but that's a huge, totally different topic, but it's a huge topic when you speak about young kids. Talk about something bad for you.
Yep.
They're the two things that it's like going backwards. We're going from now, it's like Back to the Future almost, like the movie. So we're learning, we're not learning, I should say, from our mistakes. You agree with that? That smoking and I mean cigarette, man, I'm fumbling and stumbling. We'll have to edit this all over the place. Let me reframe that. Do you believe, Doc, that smoking weed and vaping are what cigarette smoking was back in the 40s, the 50s, and 60s? It was the cool thing to do. It was safe and it was good for you.
Yeah, and there's a lot more to that than what you may think, because back then there was big tobacco. Well, today there's big marijuana, and they bankroll politicians, they bankroll the referendums, and there's tons of money that goes to this. And so it's very much similar in that way. And if you go back even before smoking in the 30s, 40s, 50s, you go back to even back to cocaine and other things, back in the 1800s, people thought that cocaine and morphine were things that were great for you. And yet we learned over time all the problems. Well, the thing is that if you really look at the medical literature for marijuana, it's right there in front of our eyes. It's just not reported to the public. And the thing is that if we educate people, they're 6 times less likely to use marijuana if they think it's harmful. If you go back to 1991, 80% of young people thought that marijuana was harmful. Well, today that's as low as 21%. And so those people are much more likely to use marijuana when they don't think that there's a problem with it.
With the book, what do you hope people learn from reading it? And then if you could tell people where they can find it, of course, also.
Well, the book is actually it's not out yet. It was supposed to be out in October, then January. It's looking like March at this point, and maybe even April, because I keep adding to it. There's so many new studies that are coming out that show the big problems with marijuana. There was a huge study that just came out in May of this year and changed slightly in August, but it showed that marijuana actually causes bipolar disorder. So there's so many new studies that I keep adding to it, like I said. But where you can find it, it's weeding out the myths about marijuana. And you can go to drwiggins.com, drwiggins.com, and click on connect there, and then sign up for the email list. And if you'll do that, when the book comes out, first of all, we'll let you know. And second of all, you'll get it at a discount. And also, if you don't mind, I would love it if you would connect with me on social media there as well. There's links there. And I want to spread the word about marijuana and help people to not start, first of all. And if they have started, then hopefully convince them to get off of it. And that's my goal. More than anything, is just educating people. And ultimately, they make their own decision. But I think if I can educate them about it, many of them will not start or quit.
I'm smiling because, you go into some of these big cities and they smell like marijuana.
Yep,
And
absolutely.
it's truly sad that our big cities in our great country are decapitating with marijuana. They're decapitating with a lot of other things too, but we won't get into that today. But Doc, thanks so much for coming on. This won't be the last time you're on here. We do want to have you on right before the launch or right after the launch. And just kind of something that I forgot about to bring to you is that we were talking about cocaine a little earlier on, and I'll shut up and end with this. Cocaine was used to make Coca-Cola back in the day. So it's very funny how that was brought up. But we
Yep.
will go ahead.
And a lot of the magic elixirs, these people that would go through towns that had medicine in these elixirs, they had morphine, they had alcohol, and they had cocaine in them. And now, of course, we know that can cause severe addiction and many other problems at this point. And down the road, I think that the public's going to understand that marijuana does many of the same things.
Yeah, it's truly sad, and people really need to wake up. Doc, thanks so much for your time today. I do hope people go to the website. Again, Dr. Wiggins, WIGGINS.com. Again, drwiggins.com. Sign up for the newsletter. So when the book does come out, and I know he'll be probably adding a lot of new information since, we do this interview, but regardless of that, sign up for that newsletter, and then he'll keep you updated when the book comes out, and then follow him on social media if you could. Doc, thanks so much for coming on today, and we greatly appreciate having you back, hopefully sometime soon.
Hey, Rob, thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate it. Great show.